Hey everyone, sorry about that. Um, I don't know if you've ever been in the position where you're about to start something or do something, and then you accidentally click the wrong button, and the wrong button that you click is just like the X out button. So I was just about to go live, and then I accidentally clicked out of it, and it screwed everything up because it canceled the stream and everything. So I had to get it reset. So we're off to a solid start today. Welcome if you've never been a part of one of these before. This is another installment of Echo Worm Live. We do this every other Thursday around about 4 o'clock Eastern Time. And if you've never been a part of one of these live streams before, the way this works is for the next hour and a half to 2 hours, we're going to go through a whole bunch of questions that you guys have left on the channel, or over on Patreon, or over on Discord, and just talk about things going on with the series that we cover on the channel, the TV shows that are related to the channel, or just stuff going on with the channel and things coming forward. So feel free to drop any questions in the comments section below. There is a noise going on behind me. I'm going to disappear for a quick second, go to fix that. But in the meantime, let me know where in the world you guys are listening from. I always love knowing the demographics of the channel. And if you want to share, whether it be your continent, your country, or as close as your city, I am always interested in knowing where in the world you guys are listening from. So give me 10 seconds, I'll be right back, and I'll see you soon. All right, should be back. Joseph Morrill asking, are you in witness protection? Not at the moment. I'm still waiting for that to happen. But real question is, Farewell to Arms in the long list of books you plan to read? It is not, but it can be if you'd like me to add it. I am familiar with Farewell to Arms to a certain extent. I've never actually read it, but I know of it, and I think I'd be willing to add it to my list. So thanks for the request. Mirage GSM, listening from Frankfurt, Germany. Well, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Mooney Child says hi. Kylitos Corner says listening from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Currently have the Chili Bowl going on right now. I don't actually know who's playing in the Chili Bowl today. I am out of date with my college football, apart from Monday's game, of course. Feel free to let me know what I'm missing in the comments section there below. There were some questions in the previous stream that I wanted to address. One was from Pogo Sam, who was asking, in terms of Eric Schwabington, both the story and the character, what are your biggest influences? So Eric Schwabington is an original book that I'm writing on the channel. You guys can find, I think, the first 9 or 10 chapters in the playlist that is labeled Eric Schwabington. The really, really long story, really, really short of what Eric Schwabington is it's a kids to kind of preteen, teen type novel that I started writing when I was 6. And what I mean by that is I took all of the things that I loved about stories when I was 6 years old, mashed them together in this world, and my friends and I used to play these characters out on the playground in elementary school. Of course, I couldn't write the story in that form. It would be a serious, serious plagiarism problem. But 15 to almost 20 years later, I am starting to rewrite the story in a way that doesn't take as overt homages to the stories that I'm ripping off. So the biggest influences for them are obviously Harry Potter with the whole magic school aspect. But there's the sci-fi element that for me was influenced by Star Wars in the early 2000s. Specifically the prequel series, and then especially the Clone Wars kind of era of Star Wars. And then there's some Avatar: The Last Airbender elements in there with the whole elemental magic system, and it's been influenced by a whole number of other things, but those are kind of the 3 main things. I like to tell people it's what would happen if you mashed up Harry Potter, Star Wars, and Avatar into one story. That's where the story comes from. In terms of character, I think Eric is mostly based off of Harry Potter. But I think there are a lot of elements with characters like Luke Skywalker, characters like Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. But I think the more that I think about it, Percy Jackson is probably personality-wise the closest we get to an influence for Eric as a character. I think in a lot of ways he's based on myself, and that's fairly common with all of the characters that I write. And just, if I were in this situation that the character finds himself in, how would I respond to it? And that kind of shapes the way that I write the character, if that makes any sense. Let's see here. Joseph Morrill says, I'd love for you to add it to the list. I'm listening in from Kansas, the most middle of the Midwest you could get. Yeah, in terms of middle of the Midwest, you're totally right. As a fellow Midwesterner myself, I feel the pain. Mirage GSM says, I'm so out of touch with college football, I thought you were having actual chili. That's funny. It's interesting that you even follow college football coming from Germany. Oh, it's actually an indoor dirt rice. Okay, that's why I was like chili bowl. There's the baked beans bowl, there's the Cheez-It bowl, there's the Pop-Tart bowl. I don't remember the chili bowl. So, okay, thank you for clarifying. I'm a cat. I don't know that I... Oh, it's the line from Eric Schwabington. Yeah. There's some good one-liners. That's the biggest difference between my two books that I'm writing. So I'm writing Eric Schwabington, that's the one we just discussed, and then I'm writing a totally different one that's a political thriller. And the political thriller still has humor and jokes in it, but it's a very heavy story. And so in order to kind of back and forth ease my mind off of things, Eric Schwabington is very heavy on jokes and deadpan humor. The other line that sticks out to me in terms of like the first 5 or 6 chapters is "that's a door" line. He just kind of says things as he sees them, and I kind of like that. So, Mirage GSM says, we do have football in Germany, but it's kind of niche. I am a Schwäbisch Hall fan, if I had to pick a German football league team. Let's go to a couple pre-prepared questions while you guys keep talking in the chat. Braden Foley asking, why do your videos have ads and can you take them off? I have no idea. None of my YouTube channels are monetized except for my essay channel, which you guys probably don't know about. There is a link to it in the description below if you want to check it out. I just did a ranking last week of every single Percy Jackson book. So if you want to check that out, I did post it on the channel, I believe, but there's a link to it in the description below as well. And maybe after the fact, I'll put something up above my head. Don't rely on me for that, but I will try to do that. In terms of why they have ads, YouTube typically tries to self-monetize everything that has over 100 views. And what that means is once a video hits 100 views, YouTube will kind of send it through its automatic processors. And if there's nothing like offensive to advertisers that they find through their automatic system, then they will put their own advertisements on it. My channel's not monetized, so that means that if there's an ad on my videos, I'm not getting any of the income, and all of the income from that is going back to Google. So I don't have any control over that. I wish I did. The only control I would have is not to make my videos so popular, and I don't really have a choice on that. But yeah, I wish I could do something about that. As far as I know, there is not anything I can do because my channel's not monetized. So Sahaman Sauer says, are you going to do the Death Cure? Maddie Wells also asks a similar question. Will the last Maze Runner book be recorded? Yes. Currently we're finishing Inheritance, which is the final of the original 4 books in the Inheritance cycle, or the Aragon series. Once we're done with that, which should finish up end of February, early March, then we will be finishing the original trilogy of the Maze Runner series with the Death Cure. Galito's Corner says, good, you got it. My favorite Eric Schwabington reference so far is that and Planet Skibidi. I'm glad. I work with middle schoolers a lot, and so the ones that follow the channel, I figured I'd kind of throw them a bone with stuff that they enjoy. So that's why I threw the Skibidi reference in there. Joseph Morrill asks, or says, what would you not call a trash can? A trash can, one of the few good quotes from... I don't know that acronym. I'm sure I should, but I don't know that acronym off the top of my head. Let's go to a question from Jelly, who asks, have you done Chalice of the Gods? Yes, I have done every single Percy Jackson or Rick Riordan mythology series book. It is available on the channel. You can find it at EchoWorm Rick Riordan. You can also find it for free on Patreon and Vimeo. The only book that I have recorded that is not available for free yet is Camp Half-Blood Confidential. I just finished that last week. It is currently available over on Patreon for paying members at $5. It will be available to everybody in about 3 weeks here on YouTube. Interesting. Never heard of it. Jittery asked an interesting question, and one that I'm very happy to clarify and explain because I completely agree with the question. and the sentiment behind it. Why do you use AI thumbnails? The answer is I don't. There is one exception and one that I'm not proud of. The Eric Schwabington series, as of this live stream, currently does have an AI thumbnail. It is one that I created a long time ago, before kind of the general knowledge about AI image creation and what that is doing in terms of its electric, not economic output. When you create images with AI, and everybody kind of knows this nowadays, you are using a significant amount of energy, and it is becoming detrimental to the planet. And I created that image before that became common knowledge. And I am desperate to replace it. I currently don't have a replacement for it. I am tempted to take those thumbnails off and literally just put a slide that says Eric Schwabington. But the good news is that I do have an artist currently working on title artwork. So, like I said, I am not proud of the fact that there is AI artwork on the channel. If you do find anything that you believe is AI beyond the Eric Schwabington series, please let me know, because as time goes on and the more that we learn about AI, and specifically AI image creation and AI content creation, I am very against it. This channel has been against it since probably the beginning, and I've made my opinions on it very clear and my position on it very clear, and it is in the process of being replaced. So please, please, if you see that, feel free to call it out on the channel. Nothing on this channel should be AI, and the AI thumbnail for Eric Schwabington should be fixed in a couple weeks here, thanks to an actual artist that I'm very, very excited to share with you guys on the channel. Let's go to a question from, or a comment from Disciples4, who says, I love season 2 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I think they get better. I think they got better than season 1. I'm very excited about season 3. I'll say this. I was impressed with episode 7. The last live stream we did came right after episode 5 came out. And I talked a lot about my opinions on episode 5. And I never shared my opinions on episode 6, but my opinions on episode 6 kind of copy my opinions on episode 5. I think my critique of episode 6 would be very similar. And the biggest thing I feared coming out of episode 6 is they changed the ending significantly. And I've never been one who's against them changing the story. My big thing is I've always been against them changing the story if it doesn't do anything, or if it doesn't make it better. And I think with most of the changes that they made so far to the show, it has not been for the better. However, in episode 7, I was very impressed with what they did with the changes. I thought the way that they changed it and the way that they affected the story with the changes that they made the ending of Sea of Monsters more intriguing. It actually engaged me in a way that I wasn't expecting it to. There might be some slight spoilers for episode 7. It's not the season finale, so I don't feel too bad about spoiling it. It did come out yesterday. But the scene where Percy takes the sword through the elevator, I think, was the first time ever. Like, I've been very critical of the show not having any tension or not having any stakes. That's my biggest critique of the show. But when that happened, I went, oh, like, I wasn't expecting that to happen, but I know exactly how he's going to get out of it. And I think this is a really cool display of what the Fleece can do. So I thought that was a really cool change. I, to a certain extent, like what they're doing with Luke and the way that they've changed that. Yeah, I really liked the changes that they did with episode 7, and I liked the way that the story is progressing. And I've always been excited for season 3, mostly because it's a season that we've never, or a book that we've never seen on screen. So yeah, I liked the changes that they made in episode 7. I'm very curious to see how it plays out in episode 8. Red Neptune 53 says, how and what got you into sports? All of my brothers were semi-professional athletes. I'm kind of the only non-athlete in the family, which is funny because by all sense of the term, I am not a non-athlete. I play sports all the time and follow sports all the time. My dad raised me as a diehard Green Bay Packer fan. And so I've always followed football. I have always grown up in a hockey family, so I've always followed hockey pretty aggressively. The only sport that I didn't really grow up watching was soccer. I picked that up in college because my roommates were super into soccer, and that was right when Minnesota United started, and our house was literally 2 blocks away from the stadium. And so we used to go to Minnesota United matches a lot when I was in college. And obviously, I've grown to follow a whole bunch of teams from around the world. I've gone to visit a whole bunch of stadiums around the world. But yeah, I would blame my parents and the family that I grew up in because I grew up in a very athletic, sports-heavy household. So. Kylido's Corner says, have we seen yet the purple guy on the Eric Schwabington cover? Please forgive me if I've missed it. No. Like most of the cover art for my books that is available on the channel, it is either the climax or very close to the climax of the book. So it shouldn't spoil anything given what we know in the story so far. My biggest issue with my own writing for Eric Schwabington at the moment is I haven't done enough foreshadowing for the finale of the book. We're about a third of the way through the book, and to me, my biggest failure as the author so far in the way that I'm writing it is I haven't progressed the story in a way that I feel is well done compared to my other series. So when I go back and rewrite it, I might foreshadow it more than I already have. But no, that will be coming up later on. Actually, chapter 11 should start pushing us in that direction to what is going to happen toward the end of the book. Mirage GSM says, a couple of months back I mentioned the 1632 series, as opposed to the, sorry, I was going to make a, oh man, I'm getting old. I was going to make a Fetty Wap joke. Have you had a chance to look at it? At least volume 1 is pretty much public domain. I have not yet. I will add it to my, as soon as I have free time, let's take a look at this list. Which is different from my let's read this list, I promise. Coffee Bean says, yeah, I finally caught a live. Happy to have you here. I am happy to answer any questions about the radiation effect if that's something you're interested in asking. You guys kind of can see my... I'm going to slightly move my camera. Hold on one sec. Shaky. Sorry. All right. Let me shift my... There. Now you can kind of see the fish. I promise we won't talk about it too much. I talked a lot about the fish last time. Are We Planter says, have you considered reading the Mortal Instruments novels? Yes, they have been requested many a time and are on my, fairly to the top of my reading list. That wasn't a very cohesive sentence. They are very high on my to-be-read list, is what I meant to say. Looks like my stream is struggling at the moment. Hold on one sec. Try to get it back here. Sorry about that. Looks like the stream dropped a couple frames for a little bit there, so hopefully we're back. The question I left off on was from Are We Planter, who asks, have you considered reading the Mortal Instruments novels? And the answer to that is yes. They're very high up on my list, and I'm hoping to get to them by the end of this year. Coffee Bean says, I love the radiation effect so much. I get so excited when I see a new chapter. There is a new chapter out today, and if you're curious why the thumbnail is the way it is, I'm using that as clickbait. The chapter title is called The Car, and if you're familiar at all with like music or specifically alternative indie music within the last 5 years, that is the name of a very popular and very well-regarded Arctic Monkeys album. And so as kind of a joke and also a kind of maybe this will trick people into clicking this, I changed the thumbnail of this chapter to the album artwork for The Car. So that's why it looks the way it does. Kylido's Corner says, in fairness, I'm pretty sure I'm a little older than you, and I don't know what Fetty Wap is. My only reference to it is epic rap battles of history, Boba Fett versus Deadpool. I'm not going to ask you to dox yourself. I shouldn't doubt that you're older than me, but I'm also older than I look. So you referencing epic rap battles tells me we're about the same age. Talisa Goslin asking, you should read, or requesting, you should read Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. I am very unfamiliar. I've never heard of that book. I will check it out. Coffee Bean, I was wondering what that was. Yeah, so it's clickbait. It's me playing YouTube. I'm so sorry, I'm going to talk about fish again. I'm fish sitting for a friend of mine who is on a long-term deployment at the moment, kind of. It's a long story, I'm not going to get into it. But anyways, I have a third fish tank off screen here now, so this is becoming an obsession, and this is my plea for help. I think I need therapy. I have a fish addiction. Coffee Bean asking, I really want to know why the Garens hate each other so much. What can I say but you're welcome. What can I say without spoiling too much? I would say the Garens don't hate each other, necessarily. It's just very complicated, and no one, except maybe one or two people, know entirely what's going on at any given time. I wish I had Johnny's power to force grab my Starbucks. Will you guys excuse me while I disappear from camera for 3 seconds to grab my drink? I need my sponsorship drink. Give me 1 second. It's been a while since I had one of these on stream. I guess they just have terrible communication. Yes. That will become a problem. They are going to miscommunicate to the point that something dramatic may happen. I'm so excited for... Okay, let me say this. The end of this book is very good. I shouldn't say good. It's a book that I'm writing. I shouldn't call it good. I am very excited to share with you guys the end of this book, because I think that it will shock you in a lot of ways, but none that aren't like foreshadowed heavily, or none that kind of come out of nowhere necessarily. And then the next book, book 3, there is something that does come out of nowhere, and it has another shock ending to the book, but it makes a lot of sense when you go back and look at what's happening with the rest of the series. So I'm very excited about the end of book 2 and book 3 is what I'm getting at. Good. You're not the only person that thinks that. I think Bill Guerin is the worst person, but I don't know if that's a trick or not, like if he's actually a good guy. I think genuinely the answer, and this isn't me trying to trick you, I genuinely think the answer to that question is it depends who you ask. And I think in terms of my philosophy for writing The Radiation Effect, that is what I'm trying to do with almost every single character. Almost every single character in this series can be told from the perspective, or based on who you ask, you will get a different answer to that question. Like, are they a good person? Are they a bad person? It will depend on who you ask for almost every single character. Mirage GSM says, TBH, I strongly dislike the trope of people miscommunicating for the sake of drama. It's not for the sake of drama, it's for the sake of there are things going on behind the scenes that certain people don't think other people can handle. And it will protect certain things from being revealed, but it will also affect other things from being revealed. Basically, think of this. What I'm trying to do, or let me use the example of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, right? The whole Poe Dameron plotline. I completely agree with you. Dislike the trope of people miscommunicating for the sake of drama. That is a use of the trope in a way that I think is ineffective, because if they were to just talk to each other, then things would be solved, right? What's going on with the Radiation Effect, and specifically with Bill Guerin, is there is something else going on that if he were to communicate clearly, a whole lot of other problems would arise. And the whole point of the Guerins, or at least kind of what I'm trying to say without spoiling anything, is how far can people go with their secrets until everything falls apart? That is the overall kind of not for the sake of drama, but for the sake of experimenting. How far can people go hiding things from other people, and specifically within their own family, before things royally fall apart? Red Neptune 53 says, how many jobs do you have in total? That's a good question, and one that I'm going to keep to myself. Coffee Bean asks, or says, I think I've noticed that pretty much every character could be good or evil. Siobhan is a lovely girl, but some people might not agree with me. I think, it depends on who you ask, right? I think in terms of the characters that we have right now, the only character, or main character, that I can see not having a dislikable factor with them right now, given the information that we know, is probably Siobhan. Maybe she rubs people the wrong way because of her abrasiveness, but I can see all of the other main characters in this series and go, all right, I can see why someone would like them, and I can see why someone wouldn't like them. Whereas with Siobhan, I don't know that we have that yet. Everything about her has kind of been very, stereotypically Mormon, for lack of any other way to put it. Like, she's over the top nice to most people she meets. Her only dislikable factor, I think, is the fact that she basically says everything that's on her mind all the time. Kylito's Corner says, after seeing how Emma reacts to everything, it's no wonder why she seems to know the least of anyone. And I don't think this is a spoiler for me to say, but I think those things go hand in hand. I think because of the way, and maybe that's what you're getting at, the way she reacts to things, how emotional she gets over things, the way that she doesn't really hold anything in and struggles to maintain her secrets, that's the first story of book one, right? Is Emma struggling to maintain this secret that she and her father have tried to hold for years. And the reason that she doesn't know the secrets, or everybody is hiding secrets from her, is because they don't trust her. They don't trust her to not reveal the things that are going on behind the scenes. Mirage GSM says, it can be done well, but so many authors do it badly, up to and including Shakespeare. I'd be very interested to see what you think of how this story progresses and where the characters go. So if you have critiques of it, using examples in the story itself, I'd be very, very happy to discuss with you. Coffee Bean saying, I'm disliking Emma more and more. Yes. It's working. My writing is working. I'm very proud of it. Surin says, are you going to do more Keeper of the Lost Cities? I would like to. I have a lot of books on my plate right now, and I am struggling to find as much free time to do additional chapters as I used to be able to do. And so I'm still doing a chapter every day, usually multiple chapters a day, but my output isn't as great as I'd like it to be, or as great as it used to be. So I will continue to do audiobooks and continue to do things as much as I can. I just have no idea when I'm going to get to the things that I want to get to. Marianne says, I would love it if you could do Malazan. I'm not familiar. I will look it up. Monica Yu says, Harry Potter or Percy Jackson? For me, it's always been Harry Potter. Harry Potter for me was first. Harry Potter for me on an objective writing and storytelling level, I think is better. Percy Jackson, I think, especially the first few books, is one of the best adaptations. Percy Jackson in itself is an adaptation of Greek mythology. I think it's one of the best modern retellings of any story ever. But I think Harry Potter is the better story. I like the characters more. I have connected with it more throughout my life. I don't think that is an objective answer. I personally have always connected more with Harry Potter. Mason Lade says, can you say put some clothes on in the Coach Hedge voice? It's been probably a year since I recorded that, so I'm going to try to remember how I did it. Put some... Oh, hold on, I got to get the growl in there. Oh, hold on. Can you guys still hear me? Something weird popped up on my screen. It's saying that my feed is dying. So let me know if you guys can't hear me or having trouble with the stream. Anyways, if you guys still can hear me, hold on. What is going on here? Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why my OBS is freaking out, but give me a sec, give me a sec, give me a sec. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. That was really weird. All right, back to the question and the request. Get some clothes on. I think that's the best I can do right now. That was the point I was trying to make about Emma. I still like her though because she has one of the biggest growth potentials of anyone. I'm glad you say that because I know there are readers that probably don't think that. And I have always defended Emma. I think of every main character, I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about Eric Schwabington. Every character I have, or at least like the POV characters, I have to write with myself in mind from some perspective. They have to have something about me in them for me to write about. And when it comes to Emma, I think Emma is probably, as a high schooler, where she is in her life, probably the most me of any main character, if that makes any sense. And, you know, I'm 10 years removed from where I was as a sophomore or a junior in high school. And I like to think that the stupid decisions that I made when I was that age have followed me to a certain extent, but I'm at the point now where I can look back and say, I did that wrong. I moved on from them, and hopefully other people can see that I've moved on and become a different person too. And with Emma, I think ultimately, without spoiling anything, I think ultimately with Emma, that is what I'm trying to do with her story. And in order to do that, I have to make her really, really dislikable. And I hope that I'm succeeding at that. Red Neptune says, how do you seem to know so much about every single culture? I'm curious what you mean by that. Like, what specific examples are you talking about? I could probably give you reasons why. I kind of have just an obsession with learning things. I have been to England several times, and I'm very familiar with most of the media that I consume is British. So I am very familiar with British culture, and because of the way that I grew up and where I grew up, I'm very familiar with Canadian culture. I'm also Norwegian, so that helps. But beyond those four, when you add America to the mix, I don't know what you mean by about every single culture. I do my best. I try to respect people as much as I can, but I'd be curious to know exactly what you mean by that. Sarcastic King Dude asking, are you going to do Wings of Fire soon? Yes. I think this question was asked last live stream too. I am currently working on the Dragonet Prophecy. I have no idea when it's going to be finished, so please give me as much patience as you can. My list of requests is very, very high at the moment. Logan Butler saying, can you do Dungeon Crawler Carl? Yes. That's been requested before. I've never read it, and I'm not familiar with it, but I do recognize that title. So it's on my list. I'll see if I can move it up a little bit. Dakota says, you should do the Vampire Academy series. It has been requested a lot. So I think I own it. It's somewhere on my wall behind me. Let's go to a question from Luke Schumacher asks, can you do the Gregor the Overlander series? It's on my list. So Gregor the Overlander is kind of the first big writing experiment by Suzanne Collins. You best know Suzanne Collins as the author of The Hunger Games. I've never read Gregor the Overlander. I've heard it's very good. I know nothing about it. I have no idea how many books it is, but I will absolutely move it up in my list because I know a lot of people have been requesting it, like a lot of people. Red Neptune says, you just seem to know more than the average American. I do my best. I grew up, especially where I'm from, I think I grew up fairly multicultural. Um, for like where I grew up is pretty stereotypical, like not redneck American, but like, you know, keep after your own, don't really talk to other people kind of America. But within that, my parents raised me in a pretty cosmopolitan house and a lot of different cultures in terms of my friend groups and my babysitters and um, people that worked for my parents or my parents worked for, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I just have been surrounded by that my entire life. Mirage GSM echoing, I've heard people recommend Dungeon Crawler Carl a lot. It sounds interesting. Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I'll have to check it out. Is the main character a cat? Maybe I have looked it up before, or maybe I'm thinking of something completely different. Flix YouTube says, have you ever read the books by Dave Pilkey, the author of Captain Underpants and Dogman? I grew up with the Captain Underpants books. I remember when the first one came out, and I probably read the first 3 before it was below my age level. My wife is the oldest of 10, and so her younger siblings are super into the Dogman books. I don't know how I would read those as an audiobook, but I'm familiar with them. I definitely know the art style. The art style is you know, for lack of a better term, iconic. It's very easy to recognize a Dave Pilkey illustration. I actually don't even know if he's an illustrator, but whoever does his illustrations on his books is, like, you can tell it's a Dave Pilkey book. Mirage GSM says, there is a cat that is a major character in Dungeon Crawler Carl. Okay, yes, I've looked it up before just to read the synopsis. I don't remember. This was months ago. Kylitos Corner says, assuming Kent lives to see 2026. It's a big ask, my guy. That is a big ask. Assuming he lives to see 2026, is he pro or anti Max Verstappen? I did drop a Formula One reference in chapter 10? No, sorry. You guys wouldn't know that. So let me back up before I answer the question. I have been editing my first draft of the Radiation Effect, the first book, and as part of that, I've been changing some of the dialogue choices. And in, I think it's chapter 3. I think chapter 3, Wyatt, or Jordan, as you guys probably know him, calls Kent, I think he calls him Schumacher. I was going to say he calls him Vettel. But no, he drops a Formula One reference. So anyways, you guys wouldn't know that. Never mind. Ignore me. I'm way ahead of myself. But is he pro or anti Max Verstappen? I think it depends if Ferrari's having a good year. Because if Verstappen is keeping Charles Leclerc away, first of all, Kent's Italian, so he's going to be a Ferrari fan. And I think if Charles Leclerc is being limited by Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez in, say, like 2021, 2022-ish, then he's probably anti-Max Verstappen. I'm going to say against, because I think the bluntness probably rubs Kent the wrong way. I think Kent, as he grows older, is becoming less naive. And I think the Dutch sense of humor and the Dutch sensibilities would probably rub him the wrong way. Which is funny we bring that up because we will be seeing a German main character very soon. Mirage GSM says, from what I know about Dungeon Crawler Carl, it's about aliens killing off 95% of humanity and forcing the rest into a death game or something. Interesting. Oh, and then you say it's supposed to be quite funny despite the grim plot outline. Yeah, that's what I heard it was very funny. But Flickster YouTube says, my favorite Captain Underpants books are The Terrible Talking Toilets and Perilous Plot of Professor Poopy Pants. What are your favorites in the series? And yes, Dave Pilkey does his own artwork. You are asking me to remember a book that I haven't read in probably 20 years. Oh, man. Probably The Perilous Plot. If I had to, like, think off the top, I don't even own the Captain Underpants books. But I don't remember much about them because, like I said, it has probably been 20 years since I've read Captain Underpants. I would say Perilous Plot, just to give an answer. Jennifer Lopresti says, when are you going to do a Wicked audiobook? Oh, man. I don't know if I've ever answered this on stream before. Have you guys ever actually read Wicked by Gregory Maguire? It is not at all like the musical, and it's a lot darker and a lot more inappropriate. To the point that, please don't take this out of context, I think for the sake of my channel, I would rather read 50 Shades than Wicked. Like, it's that bad. So, yeah, if you're unfamiliar with Wicked the book, I would say be very cautious going into reading it. Like, know what you're getting into. Red Neptune says, surely you don't have time to be a gamer too with everything else you do, right? Are you a gamer? In the sense of the word, no. I have played Minecraft religiously most of my life, to the point that I used to have, and it's still up, it's still active, a YouTube channel dedicated to Minecraft that I haven't touched in years. I think it's called Briarwood Minecraft. If you look up Briarwood Minecraft, you could probably find my channel. Aside from that, I keep up with the TGAs. Like, I know which games are big and which ones are active. I have not played most of them. I've never played Elden Ring. I've never played Astrobot. But I keep up to date with games just because, like you said with the culture thing, like, I like to keep up and know what's going on. But I have not played most of these, and the only games that I've really ever played, apart from like Minecraft and sports games, are Call of Duty and Battlefield and the popular ones, like the really popular ones. I should say the really popular non-storyline heavy games. I don't really have time to do a campaign of anything. Alexis says, will you be posting the final chapter of Wrath of the Triple Goddess? It should all be available to you. If you can't find a chapter of anything Rick Riordan-wise, let me know, but it should be available to you on the channel. Jacques says, is this a face reveal? It depends if this is the first live stream you've ever seen or not. I've been doing these live streams for like 2 years, so every 2 weeks you should be able to see my face. Whether you prefer to or not, that's your choice. That one guy asking, what order should I watch the Trials of Apollo? The order that they came out in and were written in, hopefully. The order is, if I remember the titles off the top of my head, Hidden Oracle, Dark Prophecy, Burning Maze, Tyrant's Tomb, and Tower of Nero. So, you could just look up Trials of Apollo, it'll tell you the order. Excuse me. In terms of when you should read them in the overall story, you should read Trials of Apollo after Percy Jackson's books 6 and 7, and before the Nico books. That is where they fit in the timeline. Luke Schumacher asking, will there be any more Fablehaven books added? Yes, if I don't get to book 3 by the time we do Twilight, then I will do it as a daily chapter series after Twilight. Jack Clark asking, can you address the latest Game of Thrones rumors and updates? Yes, I am glad you asked about that. So first of all, when does... oh, I disconnected from my internet. Never mind. I think, is it this week that Knight of the Seven Kingdoms comes out? There is a third Game of Thrones universe TV show coming out, I think either this week or next week. called A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. It's based on a prequel novella that he wrote a long time ago. So we have Game of Thrones, we have House of the Dragon, and then in between those two series is this new show called A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Most people regard Knight of the Seven Kingdoms as some of George Martin's best work in terms of like simple storytelling, but also very, very effective character building, and what he does with these short stories is very good. And I've heard good things about the TV show. So that comes out this week, and because it came out, or is coming out this week, George R.R. Martin did an interview that I think came out either last night or this morning, talking about his updates for writing, and just the overall things that he's doing in his life in general. And the first thing that is maybe less pressing, but considering that we have season 3 of House of the Dragon coming up this summer, the biggest thing that he said, apart from the books, is that he no longer has a functional relationship with Ryan Condal. And if you know anything about the backstory to House of the Dragon, which is the prequel series to Game of Thrones, it started with 2 showrunners, Miguel Sapochnik, who was the director of a bunch of big Game of Thrones episodes, and Ryan Condal. And season 1 was regarded very well. It was very fast-paced. It told a lot of stories in a long period of time, but it was a very well-regarded season. And after the first season, Miguel Sapochnik left, and Ryan Condal was left as the only showrunner. And season 2 had a lot of issues. And the biggest thing out of that, apart from Miguel Sapochnik leaving, is that Ryan Condal and his view and vision for the show drastically conflict with George R.R. Martin as the original storyteller of these books. And because of that, a lot of people are seeing what George R.R. Martin is saying about his opinions on the TV show and his relationship with Ryan Condal, and seeing that these are warning signs for season 3 not being very good and being very, very different from the source material. And a lot of people don't think that's a good thing. Myself included to a certain extent, but I'm still waiting to see what happens. Because I didn't hate season 2, I just thought season 2 was kind of uneventful. So we'll see what happens. But that was the biggest thing having to do with the TV show, is that George R.R. Martin doesn't have a working relationship with Ryan Condal anymore. The other major, major thing that we found out about, and the kind of the worst news that we could have expected as Game of Thrones fans, is George R.R. Martin, first and foremost, currently has no plans to finish The Winds of Winter. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, that's not exactly what he said, but he basically said that he has no desire to finish Winds of Winter anytime soon. That is not his priority, and he's not looking forward to finishing it. He also said that there are no plans to publish any of his manuscripts for The Winds of Winter if he dies before finishing it. Which basically means, after having waited for this book for 15 years now, that we will very likely never see The Winds of Winter as a book. And a lot of people have guessed this, a lot of people expected to hear this news. It's frustrating that it took 15 years to get this news, but the reality is Game of Thrones, or A Song of Ice and Fire, will almost certainly end as an unfinished series. There are 5 books. It is likely that there will never be more than 5 books in that series. We will almost certainly never get Winds of Winter, and absolutely will not be getting Dream of Spring in any capacity. That's the bad news for Game of Thrones fans. The good news is George R.R. Martin is determined to write at least one more Dunk and Egg novel, or novella. The She-Wolves of Winter, which will have a different title, is kind of the follow-up to the previously released Dunk and Egg novellas. He's been working on these for a long time. That is his priority. He also mentioned he wants to do another one. I can't remember what he called that one or where it's taking place, but I think, would that make it 5 or 6 novellas in the series? And then he's also still working on some Targaryen follow-ups. So, good news in terms of short stories, bad news in terms of the overall series as a whole. He is not going to finish the series, is basically what he told us today. So, sorry to any Game of Thrones fans. Flick Street YouTube says, if I choose a favorite video game for Kent in Homeland Security, it would be the Crew Motorfest, especially the racing playlist involving Ferrari supercars. Interesting. I will keep that in mind if he ever plays video games. Disciples 4 says, did you make a ranking of the Rick Riordan verse video? I did all of the books, yeah. There's all 19 Camp Half-Blood Chronicles books. I think if you go in the description of this video, you should be... Let me double check here. I don't want to lie to you guys. So if I go to this stream, and if I go to... If I click this and see my face on my phone, and I go to the description of this video, it's not looking like it's there, but I think I posted about it a few days ago. Or you can look up Here's the Deal, Black Mirror, and you should be able to find my channel. It's got a black logo with cartoonized HTD, and I have a video called All 19 Percy Jackson Books Ranked. So you guys can check that out and let me know how my opinions differ from yours. Flick Street YouTube says, I loved your ranking list for the Riordan books. We'll leave my thoughts in your Discord. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys checking out my other channel and listening to it. Disciples 4 says, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. The series isn't necessarily canceled. You can't really cancel a book series. And the TV shows are not canceled. The TV shows are going on. Knight of the Seven Kingdoms will likely have a season 2 greenlit because the praise has been fairly high so far with the pre-release stuff. And season 3 of House of the Dragon still has yet to come out, and no news has been talked about for season 4 at all. So the book series will not be continuing, if that's what your question is. I'll stick around as long as you guys like. Feel free to keep dropping questions in the live chat. Red Neptune says, what cultures and areas of the world do you feel you know most about and least? English history is probably my biggest, like, nerd out knowledge thing. Like, I could list all of the kings of England in order, and most of the time you can tell me a year and I'd be able to tell you, or like, I used to be able to do, you could give me a year and I'd be able to tell you who the king of England was. I can certainly do that with US presidents. That's very easy to me. But because I'm not English, that's always been kind of a side interest project for me. So I would say England and Western Europe as a whole is kind of a historical obsession for me. Flick Street YouTube says, would like for you to do a ranked list for the Magnus Chase series. 213. Chelsea Spivey says, just popping in to say thank you for your service. Genuinely helped me get through life. Your voice has become so immediately soothing. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you saying that. I always love knowing how you guys connect with these stories. I started this channel for a variety of reasons, but one because I was inspired by another audiobook channel who very much helped me through the same thing. I was going through a rough patch in my life, and at the same time that all these things were going on, I was able to listen for free to my favorite books, and at the time that was Harry Potter. And so the fact that I'm able to do that for you guys is really awesome and really touching. So thank you for sharing that. Disciples 4 says, why 19? You are missing some. There are 19 total books, in 19 main series books in the overall series. There are 7 Percy Jackson books, plus 5 Heroes of Olympus books, plus 5 Trials of Apollo books makes 17, and then plus the 2 Nico books makes 19. Red Neptune says, do you plan on talking about the new Percy Jackson episode? I talked a little about it earlier. If you want to go into kind of more detail in my total thoughts on the episode, feel free to ask maybe a more detailed question or give me your thoughts and maybe I'll bounce off of them. Because like I said, I already did talk about it maybe half an hour ago, but I'm happy to give kind of more thoughts because I really just talked about the things that I was impressed by. Disciples 4 says, you said he'll not make a last book, so that means the book series is canceled. I mean, yes, but usually when you say something is canceled, that means that the funding has been pulled from it, and people don't really fund a book series in the same way they fund a TV show. So, Flick Street YouTube says, I've stopped recommending books for you to potentially cover because I know how, hold on, frames are dropping, sorry. Hold on, waiting for my stream to get healthy again. It's getting to the point where I am kind of just weighing what I want to read with what has been mostly recommended, and doing it from there. So obviously the big priorities right now, I'm going to finish Aragon, finish the Maze Runner series, and then I'm going to do Twilight, because that has been by far the most requested series since the beginning of my Patreon. And then finishing all the stuff that you guys have kind of been asking repeatedly. So Fablehaven, a series of events, Keeper of the Lost Cities. I have done the first book, but I need to do more of those, that sort of thing. So let me know if the stream is cutting out. There's some weird stuff going on right now with my stream data. I don't know what more I can do. My Wi-Fi, every single thing in the house is disconnected from Wi-Fi except for my streaming computer. So if there's some stream issues, let me know. I don't know how reliable OBS is about telling me that sort of thing. Give me 1 sec. I'm just going to sit on camera and try to figure something out real quick. And feel free to keep asking questions in the chat if you like. Okay, perfect. My wife got home. That's what happened. And I'm guessing she's watching something on Netflix, and that's why the stream is lagging. So Island Brossi says, why is the audio so low on some chapters on YouTube? All the stuff on YouTube is unmastered. And so if you know anything about audio mastering, I typically record it, or you, if you were recording, would typically record it lower than you would eventually post it. And the reasons for that are varied, but the full mastered versions are all available over on Patreon and Vimeo for free if you want to check them out. I just realized I have not done a Patreon shout out at all yet in the stream. So first of all, I just want to give a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members. These are the ones that go above and beyond though, and pay more than they need to support me. My League 2 members, my League 1 members, and of course my book club up there with Sailor Ann, John Buck, Donald Easter, Dalton Bailey, Lydia Bryant, Zhukov Crawford, Joseph Morrill, and Log. It's $5 a month to join over on Patreon. You get things in about 6 weeks in advance of the channels. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to join if you have the capability to do so. But if you really, really want to go above and beyond, get your name on this page, I believe it's $15 a month or more. Or if you want to join for $35 a month or more, I know that seems like a lot of money, and I'm totally not asking you or telling you that you have to. But the benefit of doing that and joining the book club is you get a free book every single month. I send you a physical copy for free of everything that we're covering over on Patreon. So I just sent out a copy of Inheritance, I think, was the one I sent out this month for all of my paying book club members. So Flick Street YouTube says, how many chapters are there going to be for Homeland Security? Oh, Sam would know the answer to this. I think at the moment the answer is 42. So it's gonna be not a huge distance longer than book 1, but it's gonna be about 5 to 10 chapters longer than book 1. For the sake of, there are a lot of storylines that a lot of conversations that need to be had, and they have to be paced correctly. And that's going to be the hardest part of the middle section of this book, because what happens with this book is we start to see timelines and character interactions diverging in very, very different ways. And so you'll see what I mean as we develop the story going forward. Red Neptune says, what type of bender from Avatar would you be? Earth. Always felt like an Earth Kingdom kind of guy. Second choice would be fire. Firebending is objectively the coolest. That's not true. That's a subjective opinion. Goober Hopper says, can you do Catcher in the Rye? Complicated answer. No. Not because I don't want to, because I think it would do really, really good things for my channel statistics, because a lot of people read that book for school. And I want to say it's out of copyright law now, so it wouldn't have any issues there. The biggest thing with Catcher in the Rye is my skin color and the choice use of a word that I'm not comfortable recording myself doing. So for that reason, I will not be reading Catcher in the Rye. Unless I could do it and get away with replacing that word, which causes some other complications, and especially with copyright rules, it's complicated, and I would just rather avoid the headache of trying to avoid those complications. TK Kim says, can you do Percy Jackson and the Wrath of the Triple Goddess? I have already done Wrath of the Triple Goddess. I've mentioned this a couple times. If you guys can't find any Rick Riordan book on the channel, let me know. They should all be available to you, with the exception of the side books. I'm still currently working my way through the side books. And Camp Half-Blood Confidential. Is that what it's called? Yes. Should be coming out next month for free. It's currently available over on Patreon. Eric Craig Miles says, when did Hazel get the ability to shadow travel? Good question. I'm guessing this is in reference to Court of the Dead, which is the new Nico book, in which Hazel is a main character and shows off the ability to shadow travel. And it does feel like it comes out of nowhere. I actually was reading and thinking the same thing. It is very, very poorly shown to be one of her skills in House of Hades. In House of Hades, there is maybe 1 or 2 lines where it mentions that Hazel shadow travels with Nico. And if you read it the first time, if I'm not mistaken, and you're not thinking that she's doing it herself, it can be read as Nico is helping her to travel with him. Like he brings other people with him, you know what I'm saying? So to me, when I first read that, it never occurred to me that that was one of her powers. But retroactively, it has become one of her powers, and that is the evidence that we have for it happening. Flickstreet YouTube says, what are your thoughts on F. Scott Fitzgerald, both his works and him in general? I don't know much about F. Scott Fitzgerald as a person, so I can't really answer that half of the question. In terms of The Great Gatsby, or any of his other like major works, I used to kind of, I don't know if you guys do this, I went through a phase where basically anything that was like considered good and popular, I would like pretend to be obsessed with to an odd level. So like the first time I read Great Gatsby, it was like, oh, this is the greatest piece of literature ever. Have you read The Great Gatsby? Of course you haven't. You don't know real literature, that sort of thing. And so there was a time when I was a really big fan of F. Scott Fitzgerald and that book. And the older I get, the more I understand the characters. I like the approach that is used for the characters, but I also don't like how depressing that book is. And every time I read it now, it just kind of feels soulless. And I think that is an issue with a lot of his writing is, apart from like the critical acclaim that it gets, there's not a lot of feeling in the books. The characters all have feelings, but I don't know. It's like it's lacking something for me, and so that's my long kind of opinion on it. Disciples 4 says, I guess I'm not really understanding the question. I'm going to try to work my way through the wording here. You think weapon made from celestial bronze and imperial I'm guessing gold, could be happening with Hephaestus and Hecate Kid working together. Um, I guess I'm not really understanding the question. Do I think that it could be possible to make something both from Celestial Bronze and Imperial Gold with a Hephaestus and Hecate Kid working together? I don't know that Hecate would need to be involved. Um, I don't really remember the in-universe laws of why they can't be used together or why they haven't been used together before, apart from just the Roman-Greek divide. Um, so unless I was given direct evidence, I think that could be possible. I don't know why Hecate would have to be involved. Kat is asking, are there really only 3 Magnus Chase books? Yes. The way Rick Riordan has written his stories so far, as of recording, the Greek and Roman stuff always gets 5 books in a series, and the non-Greek and Roman stuff always gets 3 books in the series. There are side books and like the visual guides and like the short story collections, but yes, there's only 3 Kane Chronicles books and there's only 3 Magnus Chase books. Ginger Jesus asks, can you please keep posting the Maze Runner series? I mentioned we are finishing the Death Cure. Yeah, sorry, that's the 3rd book. The Death Cure will be up after Inheritance, which is the final Inheritance Cycle series. Reader Divine Rivals says hi in the chat. Hello. Joshua Vanderhoven says, where can I find the Google Drive on Patreon? Good question. I forgot to mention this when we were going over Patreon stuff. If you are a member of my $8 a month or more secret content club, you get access to a Google Drive where I have a bunch of my audiobooks available for download where you can listen to them offline. If that's something you're interested in, join the secret content club and just DM me on the app. You should be able to find the messages section on the app. DM me and just say, hey, can I have access to the Google Drive? Here's my Gmail. And then I'll send you direct access to it. And that you should have access as long as you're a member of that secret content club. Kylito's Corner says, I can't remember if you've answered this or not, but have you seen any of the Fallout series? I have not. I've seen a lot of commercials for it, and I've heard very good things about it. I've played, to a certain extent, just kind of talking about the video game question from before. I have played Fallout a couple of times, not in full. And so I'm familiar with the world, but I have not really followed it. I haven't seen the TV show, I just know about it, and I know about the Fallout universe to a certain extent. Reader Divine Rival says, what is your least favorite character in Percy Jackson? Depends what you mean by, well, depends how you define the bounds of your question. Are you talking main characters or are you talking just characters in general? Because I think if you expand it really wide, it would take me a long time to think of who my actual like least favorite character is. In terms of main characters, I would probably say Jason. I think Jason is the character equivalent of white bread. Flick Street YouTube says, one problem about the gods in Magnus Chase is that it doesn't seem like Riordan wants to either parody them or do his Marvel-inspired spin on them. I don't think it works well at all. Yeah, last live stream I went through a lot of issues that I have with the Magnus Chase series, and I agree that that's one of them. I think he's inconsistent in the way that he writes the god characters. I think Loki is probably well written compared to some of the other ones. I think Thor. The interesting about Rick Riordan's the interesting thing about Rick Riordan's Thor is he starts by describing how he's different from the Marvel Cinematic Universe Thor, and then almost immediately devolves the character into what Thor became in the MCU, like overweight Thor from Avengers Endgame. It's very weird how Rick Riordan writes it, and it's one of a lot of issues with Magnus Chase, in my opinion. Let's go to a question from some H person who says, how can I request an audiobook? You can ask for it, but if you really want to get weight behind your request, I do have a tier that I listen to more than any others over on Patreon. But I also have a really, really long list of books that I'm reading. So if you request something, it may take a while to get there. Bullard Barnes says, have you done Maze Runner? Yes, I've done the first Maze Runner. I've also done the second Maze Runner, and I'm currently about to start after Inheritance, the third one. Gayathras Kumar says, will you move things from your Patreon onto YouTube for those of us that can't afford Patreon? Everything on Patreon is available for free, with the exception of about 6 weeks worth of content. So everything that is 6 weeks in advance and currently only available for paying members will become free on Patreon in 6 weeks after it's released. The reason that some of it's not on YouTube is for a variety of reasons. Copyright purposes, YouTube's copyright policy is very odd right now. I would like to recommend the channel Verdana, Verdana, who has a variety of great videos, one of which is a Disney movie ranking video. But the reason I bring up this channel is he just posted a video about YouTube's AI content policy and behind-the-scenes creation problems. And in that details how basically everything YouTube does is AI automated. And it is causing channels to fall apart. It is the reason that my main channel is gone. It's the reason that I can't post as much to YouTube anymore. And it's the reason that I've moved almost everything, still for free, but over to Patreon and Vimeo, because YouTube is not very user-friendly to creators. And so, yeah, it probably won't come to YouTube, but like I said, it's free still. You just have to go to Patreon or Vimeo. Reader Divine Rival says, have you ever read a book in the murder mystery genre? Not on the channel that I can think. Well, I've done a couple Sherlock Holmes short stories. But in terms of like Agatha Christie, I have a whole collection. It's off, see, can you guys see it? Basically, hold on, this corner, if I were to go like 2 more inches that way, you'd see my Agatha Christie collection. But I've never read it on the channel. Carlito's Corner says, I really liked Drew Schwabington and didn't expect him to recognize Eric so quickly. But then again, the way he was described as looking very similar to him, it makes sense. I'm glad you said so, because Drew's arrival and reveal to Eric is supposed to be kind of this twist. It's like, oh, what the heck, I have this brother? And then he sees him for the first time and he goes, oh, that's my brother. Like, it's this twist that I don't know if I handled very well. So I'm glad you think so. I want Drew to be a very likable character, and I am glad that you liked the way he was introduced to the story. But like I said, there's some writing choices that I've made with Eric Schwabington so far that I'm definitely going to go back and change. And so if there are things that you don't like, please feel free to let me know, because A, I probably have noticed them so far, but I'm also worried that I'm overthinking everything. So just let me know kind of your thoughts on it. Disciples the Fourth says, because both metal are magical, you need Children of Her to get a better understanding of those different types of magic minerals properly. Yes, but Hecate is mostly the goddess of visual magic. And so in terms of like immortal powers and magical properties, I would think that falls under Hephaestus's purview. And especially when you say minerals, like to me, when I think magic minerals, I don't think of Hecate, I think of Hades. Because Hades, or Pluto specifically, because Pluto is literally the god of minerals. So I don't know, we're getting into complicated territory. It depends which mythology you fall under, and I don't know that Rick Riordan has defined his well enough to be able to say that. So, I'm not trying to argue, I just, like, when I think of that, I really don't think of Hecate. Flick Street YouTube says, one problem I had with Magnus Chase is my surprise that Blitzen, Hearthstone, and Sam are more prominent in the first 2 books than Alex, Mallory, TJ, and Halfborn are, which surprised me. Yeah, well, okay, so Alex isn't even in the first book. But I agree with what you're saying. My thoughts are, Magnus Chase doesn't use its main characters, or even its like side main characters, very well. in terms of when it introduces them and how it uses them. Like, we are introduced to the floor 119? I can't even remember what floor they're on. Mallory, TJ, and Halfborn, and X in the first book. We're introduced to them like right away, and then they kind of disappear for basically the entire book until maybe the ending, and then they're really not in the second book, and then all of a sudden they're main characters in the third book, and like it just feels weird. Like, why would you introduce them and not use them the way that you expect them to be used? It kind of feels like a waste. And I'm sorry to keep talking about Eric Schwabington, but I think one of the biggest issues that I have had with my own writing in Eric Schwabington is introducing all of these side characters to kind of flesh out the world, but not effectively using said characters and just kind of having them there for fluff. So I totally agree with that sentiment. Carlito's Corner says, I also didn't expect Drew to be Eric's brother, but be a link to Eric's immediate family like a cousin. But Eric deserved to win. Yeah, I think after how many chapters we've had where Eric is kind of being combative with other characters, it's nice to have a win for him. I will say, him being his brother, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's more to it than we see. There's more to it than meets the eye, so I'll let you speculate about that one. There's always a secret going on. I don't write without secrets. Let's see here. Mirage GSM says, in the first book, those four had just met Magnus and really hadn't any reason to go AWOL with him. I was more surprised that they sided with him so easily in the final battle. Yeah, well, okay, so yes, I agree with that. But I think my bigger issue is Hearthstone and Blitz arrive and take Magnus away. And in basically every single one of these books, they just disappear for large chunks of the story. And it, to me, feels like Rick Riordan brings in these characters and doesn't have any clue how to cohesively put them in the same scenes, and then they just disappear for absolutely no reason. Like, it's kind of shocking what it does to the pacing of the story. It's like, oh, I gotta go do this over here. See you in 4 chapters. And then they go off and do a little adventure. And in the first couple, I may agree with you. I think it's more an issue with Blitz and Hearthstone than it is the Floor 19 folk. But especially when you get to the third book and they are main characters, it's like, why have they not been... It treats them like they've been Magnus's best friends, because off-screen they have been, but we haven't understood that from where we are as the readers. Does that make any sense? Let's see here. Reader Divine Rival says, what is your favorite of the Greek gods in Percy Jackson? Non-Olympians, either Nike or Nemesis. But in terms of Olympians, favorite? That's a good question. I actually don't know. I'd have to really think about my favorite Olympian. I don't know. Red Neptune, you should watch anime if you don't. Start with Full Metal Alchemist. You would like it if you like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Sure. What was the anime that was just... Oh, it wasn't an anime. It was just a TV show that was recommended to me that's animated. But Mirage GSM says, I think by the second book it makes sense. I'm not here to disagree or argue. I think my opinions are not necessarily the correct ones. So I'll hand it to you. You probably know the story better than I do. Whiskey May asking, can you read Powerless? I'm not familiar with Powerless. I'll have to check it out. Senan Sarvan, can you read the 6 Olympians next? I am also unfamiliar with the 6 Olympians. I'll have to check that out and see if it's worth adding to my list. Uchiha asking an interesting question. How can Minerva have children? I thought they were confused and disgusted by Annabeth because she was a child of Athena. Yeah, good question. So I think the reason behind this has to do with, and I don't know the in-universe exact explanation, and I might be wrong in saying this, but my understanding is Minerva, as a Roman goddess, can actually have children. Um, and the reason that they're disgusted with Annabeth as a child of Athena is because Athena, as the Greek goddess, doesn't give birth to her children. And so that's where we have this weird, like, Annabeth was born out of the head of Athena and literally just like appeared one day. There's always been this question of, does Annabeth have a belly button? You know, because she wasn't born naturally. And so I think that's where the disgust for Annabeth comes from, because it's like, oh, our mother, which is also your mother, gave birth to us naturally, but you were born the weird way. And so I think that's where it comes in. I could be wrong about that. I don't know if there's ever been an actual explanation for it. Flickstreet YouTube says, one thing that gives me mixed feelings about Alex and Magnus at the end of the series is Alex seems to be all, yeah, all right, when they get together. She doesn't show much desire for him. Yeah, so it's really weird, and we're getting into complicated territory talking about immortal teenagers and sexuality preferences. And I don't know that that is a conversation that we can responsibly have on a live stream at 5:30 in the evening, um, especially one that is hosted by a straight cisgender 20-something-year-old audiobook reader. Um, and I think the biggest issue is it was written by an author who, while he is very well connected to the LGBT community, is not a member of said community. And trying to write the dynamics that he is doesn't effectively write them. Does that make sense? And so you're complicating, first of all, the gender identity aspects of the story and the sexuality aspects of the story with character interactions and character quirks, and is not done so in a way that's very effective or very responsible. And so I completely agree with you, because we don't ever see, I mean, we do see like between them, like romantic affection between them. Um, it's unexpected, especially from Magnus, and I think, given the subtext of the chapter, I think it's unexpected from Alex as well. Magnus's sexuality, for lack of a better term, is not really discussed ever. And so if you're not expecting that to happen, it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere. And then, like you said, you get the weird, awkward interaction where it just kind of, it could be a relationship, it could not be a relationship. And every time I read it, it feels to me like Rick Riordan is afraid to fully engage with it, because he himself doesn't know where to go with these characters or with this relationship going forward. He doesn't know how to address the Magnus being in love with a person who is a girl at times and a boy at times. He doesn't know how to tell that story from Magnus's perspective. And he especially doesn't really understand how to explore both dynamics from Alex's perspective, liking the same boy, but from different gender aspects. Does that make any sense? I think that it's a really, really complicated issue, but the biggest thing I'm trying to get at is it's not very well written. And so I completely agree with you. Flickster YouTube says, to simplify things, Alex and Magnus is my least favorite main character relationship in all of the Riordan books he's written. I would probably agree with that. Oh boy, if I had to rank relationships, main character relationships in Rick Riordan's series, I would go Percy Annabeth, Frank Hazel, Sadie Will, Carter Zia, Did I already say Nico Will? And then I would go Leo Calypso, Sam and Amir, and then probably then Jason Piper, and then yeah, I would agree. Reader Divine Rival says there's so many connections in the Hunger Games series. Yes, I completely agree. Did something happen to my color filters on the screen? Did you guys notice that? That was really weird. It was like my camera changed colors for a second, and now the lighting in my office is weird. Yeah, it's one of my biggest issues that I have with Sunrise on the Reaping is it would make sense for these characters to know each other, but to have them all kind of related to each other in very, very personal ways makes the world feel very small in a way that I don't enjoy. So I completely agree with you. Mirage GSM says, I've only listened to the first 2 books of the Magnus Chase series, but I think the Magnus-Alex pairing was already foreshadowed quite heavily. I don't disagree that it was not foreshadowed. It's just not written very well. Specifically the ending of it. So if you read the 3rd book and think otherwise, then let us know. But the way that it is finally culminated is awkward in a way that doesn't feel like it is intentionally awkward. Carlito's Corner says, forgetting the movies, that's the most important part of this question, how satisfied are you with Harry and Ginny as a couple by the end of Harry Potter? Very satisfied. I think Ginny is one of my favorite characters in the books. And I think her relationship with Harry is told very well. For those that haven't read Harry Potter or need a refresher on the relationship, Ginny in the 1st book is Ron's baby sister. I mean, she's not a baby, she's 10 years old. And then in the 2nd book, she is Ron's little sister who has such an infatuation with Harry that it causes her to make a really, really poor decision that almost destroys their world. And then we get 2 books where she is kind of in the background, still maybe has feelings for Harry, and then the interesting dynamic is she goes to the ball in the 4th book with Neville because Hermione tells her to get over herself with Harry. And that's when things flip, because as soon as she gets over her obsession with Harry, then all of a sudden Harry starts noticing her. And it doesn't really happen in book 5, but in book 5 she kind of becomes more a part of their friend group in a way that she never had been before. To the point where she becomes friends with Harry, and then in the 6th book, she's dating, quote-unquote, 2005 book logic, a lot of boys, to the point where Harry gets jealous. And he really has fallen in love with her as a friend, and has fallen in love with her as just a fiery personality in his life that he spends a lot of time with. But there's the complication that she's Ron's sister, and this isn't right of him to do. And then we finally get the whole culmination of their arc, and Ron gives them permission, and then they don't fall in love because the things at the end of book 6 happen, and then they get together at the end of book 7. And it makes a lot of sense for me. I think it's very well written in the books. Carlito's Corner says, will there be any weapons that either resemble lightsabers or bear similarity to lightsabers in Eric Schwabington in the future? Yes. I have to be very careful with how I write them. The best description that I can give for the lightsabers that will appear in Eric Schwabington in the future. I might be dating myself. If any of you grew up with Jimmy Neutron and can remember the episode where they went on an intergalactic space reality game show. It's basically Space Survivor. And if you can remember the laser swords that they had in that episode, where it's basically a sword with a broad blade, but it was still kind of this laser. Anyway, that's always what I've kind of pictured as my version of lightsabers for Eric Schwabington. Spider-Man 14116 says, do you think the age of the Percy Jackson cast will affect the future seasons? Yes. It has been my biggest critique with the schedule of the show's release since it started. It's why I've always felt that Percy Jackson would work better as an animated TV show. And it has caused significant problems already. Walker Scobell's voice is way too low to be believable as a 13-year-old. What else do I have gripes about? The fact that if they're ever going to even try the Heroes of Olympus books, all of the actors will be in their mid-20s playing 16-year-olds, which was fairly common in the early 2000s, is not common anymore and is no longer believable in a television medium. It's one of the biggest issues that Stranger Things has had, especially with Holly Wheeler. And I think it's going to cause a lot of issues production-wise going forward. It's also going to cause a lot of problems for the careers of the actors involved, especially if they do want to continue the series. They're going to be in their mid-20s, still playing the same characters and struggling to get work outside of the Percy Jackson TV show. It is a major issue in Hollywood right now, and it needs to be fixed very, very soon. Kylito's Corner says, I've kind of felt like Ron would have almost always been okay with Harry and Ginny being a couple at any point in the series when it would have been appropriate, like book 4 onward. My only argument against that, because I don't disagree, but my only argument against that would be is it the Hog's Head that they're at, or the Three Broomsticks scene in book 6, where Ginny is making out with Dean, and Ron makes comments about how he wouldn't want anyone to date his sister. And Harry gets really freaked out because he's having these feelings about Ginny, and he doesn't want Ron to know that he's having these feelings. That would be my only argument against Ron being okay with it. But by the time that it actually happens, he is okay with it. Flick Street YouTube says, one thing I love about Frank and Hazel becoming a couple is how they look past how Frank doesn't let his insecurities overshadow his feelings for her, and Hazel values Frank's bravery very much. Also, Hazel lets herself be happy with him despite her terrible past before escaping the underworld. Yeah, I think I totally agree. One of the biggest benefits to their relationship, in my opinion, is the way that there are all these factors complicating how easy it is for them to like each other, and all the ways they're trying not to be together. But very quickly, they realize that them being together is more important for both of them than it is to kind of argue the things getting between them. It's one of the biggest issues I have with Sadie and Walt in the Kane Chronicles. It's also an issue I have with all of the relationships in the Magnus Chase series. And it's kind of, I don't like Jason and Piper as a couple very much at all. But I really hate the way they broke up because of, I don't like Jason, but I also almost equally don't like Piper very much, especially by the end of her story. I completely agree. The 2-year age gap is way too much. In the context of the Heroes of Olympus, yes, the age gap between Hazel and Frank is weird. It is weird. That is also an issue I have with it. It feels weird. Even if she is like 100 years old. Mirage GSM says, I mean, it would be possible to change the characters to be a bit older. Having 13-year-olds believably fighting monsters has been one of the things I found a bit strange about the books. Yes, but it's never been addressed in the show, and I think that's the problem we have. It's the same issue. I hate to keep using the Stranger Things problem, but yes. I was watching the Stranger Things finale, and, you know, there's the 18-month jump at the end of the episode. And the fact that canonically, 5 seconds ago, these characters were 15 or 16 years old, and in the next scene, Lucas is calling his girlfriend sexy, is very weird. It feels like a very awkward jump, given where the characters were literally 5 seconds before this jump. Reader Divine Rival says, how is a 2-year gap too much? Because the characters are like 15 years old and 13 years old. As an adult, that is not an issue necessarily. Like my wife and I are 2 years apart, but we also didn't date when she was 13. So Mirage GSM, in the books it's not as noticeable because you're not reminded of their age as often. Yes. Oh, Spider-Man says, I mean a 2-year gap between making seasons of Percy Jackson. Yes, absolutely. When you're telling a live action story with actors who are believably supposed to be the same age as their characters, and you are taking 2 years to tell a story that has a 1-year time gap, that is an issue. Yes, completely agree. Sorry I took that in a weird direction. Flick Street YouTube says, about Ginny and Harry, I also like that Ginny was basically making Harry come to her, knowing that once he showed his feelings for her, she'd accept him in an instant. She even told him that. Yes. Seriously, in the book, it is a very well-written relationship. Ginny gets over her obsession with Harry, and Harry is the one that ends up falling for her. And she's okay with it because she's had... Imagine it under these circumstances. You have the biggest crush in the world on someone in middle school. Like an obsession with them. And I can relate to that. I was in that situation when I was in middle school. And you have to get over it, and it takes a lot to get over it. And then 5 years later, once you're over it, and you are an established person, and you know who you are, all of a sudden, this person that you had a crush on comes back to you. Like, especially still being in your high school years, that has to be one of the greatest feelings in the world. I never experienced that, but that's okay. Red Neptune says, Alexander Daddario as Annabeth. Yes. With the blonde hair, preferably, because the... Remember when we were throwing issues about Annabeth having brown hair in the movie? We've come a long ways. Spider-Man says, are you excited about the HBO Harry Potter series, and do you have any problem with the castings? I've talked about this before. I'm happy to kind of briefly discuss it again. I almost clicked something again. I'm not going to click out of my stream this time. I am very excited for the Harry Potter TV show. And given everything that I know about the Harry Potter TV show so far, and the production that has gone on with it, have no present reasons to not be excited about the TV show, with one exception, and that is obviously the casting of Papa Essiedu as Snape. I have no issues with Papa Essiedu as an actor. My reservations toward the casting come from the fact that, so far as we know, none of the other professors are black. None of the other main character actors are black. And when you look at Snape in the books, specifically how he is made fun of and how he is treated by the other characters, it is going to feel very, very weird if they don't do things differently. That is the only issue I have. There were also rumors about them casting a female Voldemort. I don't think that's accurate. They opened a casting call for Voldemort to everyone. And that doesn't mean that they're going to cast a female Voldemort, and it also doesn't mean that if they were to cast a woman in the role, it wouldn't just be for the physical scenes that we get in the first season. And so, apart from that, like, there are zero issues with what I know about the production that make me not excited. There's always caution going into productions like this and adaptations. I think there are going to be issues with it that will come up later once we finally have evidence of the TV show in front of us. But from everything I've heard and everything that the showrunners have talked about with their goals for the series, I'm very excited. I'm very excited that they're committed to keeping it locked into like a 90s timeline. I like the aesthetic that I've seen so far, and I like the casting choices that I've seen so far. Ramai Taparia says, can you please do the Court of the Dead? I have already done Court of the Dead. You should be able to find it on the channel if you look. I've said this a couple times now. Every single Rick Riordan main series book should be, available on the channel. I'll go for about 10 more minutes here. If there are any questions we don't get to, feel free to drop them in the comments below instead of just the chat. Or, I haven't brought up Discord so far. If you want to check out the Discord server, feel free to do so. There should be a link that never expires in the description of this video. You guys can talk about literally everything. There are 600 members, and for whatever reason, it still feels dead sometimes. So please have active conversations over on Discord. It's there for a reason, and I would love to have you use it. I love interacting with all of you guys outside of these live streams as well as in them. Spider-Man says, did you watch Welcome to Derry? No, it is on my list of TV shows to watch, but that is a very, very long list as well. I'm still on my Star Wars rewatch at the moment. Flickstreet YouTube says, one thing I love about the Camp Half-Blood couples, aside from Jason and Piper, is that they're not only friends first, but they also love and value each other and the best parts of each other. Yes, I completely agree, which is why it's so shocking that when we get to something like Magnus Chase, the characters are written not always in that way. I do think there's a dynamic there. It's so weird. Magnus Chase is a weird series, man. You have an arranged marriage of teenagers in a very insensitive take on Islamic culture. But at the same time, the characters of Amir and Sam kind of have fallen into that dynamic, which I like a lot. It's very weird. It's not very well written. Can we stop talking about Magnus Chase, please? That's all I got. Flickstreet YouTube says, they don't let their struggles and differences drive them apart. Yeah, I completely agree. Spider-Man 14116 says, I want to watch Star Wars, but now there are too many movies and other things. I do not know the order. You should be able to look up the order of them. There's a pretty good Reddit post about the order to watch things in. I am literally watching everything Star Wars related in chronological order. I started with The Acolyte about 2 weeks ago, and then I watched, I think it's the first 2 episodes of Tales of the Jedi or something like that, and then you watch Phantom Menace, and then you watch more Tales of the Jedi, and then you watch Attack of the Clones, and now you're on Clone Wars. And then someone made a 5-hour edit where they took the final 4 episodes of Clone Wars and mixed them together with Revenge of the Sith, which I've heard is a weird watch because it shifts between live action and animation, but I'm still going to do that once I get there. I'm only on season 3 of the Clone Wars at the moment, and then from there, like, it gets even more complicated. If you just wanted to watch the films, I would go, and seriously, I would do this. I would go 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6, and then add any of the other films that you want to watch, whether it be like Rogue One or Solo or even the sequel series, and then you could start putting together all the different TV show aspects of it. But doing the 4, 5 first thing, and then doing 1, 2, 3, and then 6, it kind of helps you get through the slower parts of Star Wars in a way that makes the story feel cohesive. Flickstreet YouTube says, have you seen Spaceballs, and are you excited for the long-awaited sequel in 2027? Most of the main cast will be back in it. Yes, I've seen Spaceballs. I'm very familiar with Spaceballs. Am I looking forward to the sequel? If you would have asked me that 20 years ago, I would have said yes. My answer now is Mel Brooks is about to die. Like, Mel Brooks is almost 100 years old. Rick Moranis is late 60s, maybe even 70 years old at this point. I have no idea how old the other characters are. Most of them are dead. Like, John Candy's dead. Joan Rivers is dead. I have no idea how old Daphne Zuniga is at this point. So it's... and Bill Pullman has to be late 60s now too, right? Like it. Am I excited? Maybe, but yeah, this movie came out over 40 years ago. Like it, yeah. I don't know. I got weird feelings toward it. It definitely feels like a cash grab, which is funny because like in the original Spaceballs movie, they made the joke about the sequel literally being titled The Search for More Money. So like it fits, but at the same time, am I looking forward to it from a quality standpoint? Probably not. It's not going to hit the same notes. I think with that, I'm going to wrap things up. So feel free to keep dropping questions for next live stream in the comment section below. Today is January 15th. I think we'll shoot for January 29th as our next live stream. So hopefully we'll see you then. Otherwise, like I said, join the Discord. Feel free to check out Patreon and Vimeo if you want plenty of other content that's not available on YouTube. Otherwise, check out my second channel. You can look up Here's the Deal Black Mirror and you should be able to find it. Check out my original content on this channel. It's called Eric Schwabington, or you can look up The Radiation Effect. Those are two separate stories. You might like one, you might like the other, you might like both. That'd be great. Let me know what you think of them in the comments below or on Discord. Otherwise, we'll see you back here on the channel very, very soon.